They then lynched a man, Scott Burton, who tried to protect his barbershop on 9th Street and his family who lived behind the barbershop. And when he tried to protect them in his doorway, he was murdered, and they dragged his body east on 15th Street and lynched him, that is to say, hung the body for display. By that time, several thousand state militia troops from Decatur and other cities had been called into town on emergency by the governor because the local authorities seemed either unable or unwilling to prevent the rioting.
These people in the Northeast are the angriest. That's the nucleus that gets the riot started, and that's the nucleus that goes from the courthouse to Loper's Restaurant, then to the levee, and then ultimately to the Badlands. And it's that core, for the most part, that continues the violence the following day as well.
That evening, another mob organized around the county courthouse, which is what we now call the old state capitol. They clearly had in mind more lynching or trouble, and they proceeded in an opposite direction to the southwest, crossed the State House lawn, and assaulted an elderly black man of some stature in town, William Donegan, who owned a home and lived there quietly with his family. And they dragged him out of his home and sliced his throat, just an outright act of murder.
He was married to a white woman. That was mentioned publicly as part of the reason. He was vulnerable. The militia and the police decided to put their men where they were most needed and felt that they couldn't spread their troops out to guard isolated households like the Donegans. So they were very, very vulnerable.
There's no doubt in my mind, given the behavior of the mob those two nights, that part of this riot was an effort to intimidate African Americans into leaving Springfield.
One of the things I did was to take the names of those who had been directly victimized or directly threatened that I knew of. You think of all people, they'd be the most likely to get out. No, they came back. And they're still there. They didn't leave.
You know, one interpretation of the riot itself is that there was this resentment by whites of black success. And then you also see that another of the targets was Jewish establishments. And maybe just resentment of anybody who was more successful than you are. And certainly the guy who could afford the first car in Springfield, there must have been some people who resented that.
You had to have a grievance. There's a reason why all of those wealthy Springfielders from the west side aren't out there on the streets with torches and pitchforks. They aren't the aggrieved parties. The aggrieved parties are the people who have suffered those alleged offenses. From the white rioters' point of view, it's about justice. It's about righting a wrong. They clearly think what they're doing is right. These people weren't hiding their identities when they rioted. They weren't wearing masks. They were just out there marching.